Hi, Julie Jones from SSB Performance, Smarter, Stronger, Better Mindset Training. Here with this week's Mindset Made Simple Tip of the Week, brought to you by Game Day Sportswear. This week, we're talking about when good intentions miss the mark. A story about being present. So this morning, I had the great opportunity to speak with over 100 athletic directors from Northeast Ohio, and I was excited. I was prepared. I had everything, laid out weeks before. I knew exactly what I wanted to talk about. It was content that I'm passionate about, content that you've heard about in tips and in all these videos that I do. And I was passionate and really eager to share some insights with athletic directors about their mental game, since most of the things they hear about are about the athletes or even the coaches. So we were focusing just on them. And I was pumped and ready to go. But I walked away feeling like maybe it wasn't my best. I mean, we hit on the 3 power moves, which all of you have come to know and hopefully love. We did some great interactive things, and I got some energy going in the room, and all those things went pretty well. But I was distracted. And I was distracted because I thought that I had to be done sooner than I really had to be done. I thought from the very beginning that we got behind a little bit. I had this thought in my head that my time was ticking and that I needed to wrap things up. So that pushed me through my presentation a little more quickly than I really wanted to go. And I dropped a story or I skipped over a couple slides, and I hit on all the main points, but it could have been better. Now, we all know that things can always be better, but this time constraint that I put on myself that wasn't even real changed the way that I felt about the presentation, and probably changed a little bit of the interaction that I had. Now, I got some good reviews. I already got some great emails. So thanks to anybody who was there today. I had some nice conversations. Already have a new engagement coming up in a couple weeks that we negotiated while we were in the hallway. But this experience underscores how things can compromise our performance. Things that we often just sort of let happen, right? It's the internal distractions. It had nothing to do with my preparation. I had all my notes. I had the slides ready to go. I had everything ready. I was prepared and I know the information inside and out. And yet, those internal distractions, and then we throw in external distractions. Oh my gosh, here we go. But here's the truth. We know that things like this need to happen. This is how we stay sharp. And I've already, since I was driving home and after writing this tip, I was thinking about how can I use this experience to make me better? And I've got some really good things to talk about. When we get into these situations, we are dealing with these sort of invisible things that make their way into our work, whether we're on the field, whether we're in the boardroom, whether we're in front of 100 and some people. These pesky little cognitive biases that we have sometimes sneak in. We're going to talk about a couple of those before we get to the tools, the things that I want to be able to do to make myself better, and things that I think can help all of us. But one of those pesky distractions, right? There's always invisible forces at play. We know this. But one of those pesky distractions was coined by psychologist Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky. I'm so good with names, I know. They identified the planning fallacy. And this is the cognitive bias where we underestimate the amount of time required to complete something. Even if we've already done something similar, we still have a tendency to overestimate the amount of stuff that we can get done. Now, this has been my life story. My dad has been telling me my entire life that there are 24 hours in a day, and what you think you can do cannot get done in that amount of time. And I know that he's right. I know I have this tendency. This is not the tendency that hurt me today. I actually pared down my slide deck. I actually pared down some of the activities that we were going to do. But I did cut out something that I really did want to do because I thought that it was on this time constraint. We'll get back to that in just a second. But if we don't pay attention to this bias, it can lead to rushed and incomplete work. And think about how this might show up on the field or in the boardroom or when you're putting a presentation together. In sports, we could underestimate the time it takes to run a play, right? Because in real life, we have a tendency to overestimate our ability, which we've learned in practice, and we often fail to factor in variables that don't show up in practice like they do on the court or on the field, or when we're standing in front of people and there are questions or people are moving around and the guy in front of you goes too long, which might have happened a little bit today. I don't even know because I was already rushed in my head. But these real life obstacles like defensive pressure or even decision fatigue, or just even the fact that our heart rate is up, we don't factor these things in. And then our planning fallacy comes into play because we probably have too much to do in too little time. Now, if you have extra time, awesome. You can always fill that. But as we know when we're speaking, 3 points, 3 power moves, and making sure that you're realistic. This has come to bite me in the butt before. Today, I was adamant that that wasn't going to happen. Thank goodness I didn't have all extra stuff in there because I pressed myself so quickly otherwise. But this is the point of keeping it simple. And then if we have more time, we can expand, or we can be creative, or we can adjust from there. But that usually isn't the case. The second thing that we often get distracted by, or one of these invisible factors that are at play, is this. Have you ever relied too heavily on the first piece of information that you got? Well, I did that today. The first piece of information, I had a schedule. I looked at the schedule. I even planned on what time I would be home. So I knew what my drive time was. I knew exactly how it was all played out. And then somehow a cue came in, and that was my anchor. So we have this anchoring bias that we get connected to something, and then we can't see things in other ways. Right? You can think of a million ways that this shows up. A pitcher has a great outing against somebody. He or she then thinks that the same approach is going to work, right? This is the information. We're anchored to this past information that we have. We're not willing to change it. Just like I could have easily asked my buddy Jeff in the front row, hey, Jeff, how much time do I have? You can do that in the middle of a presentation, right? Not a problem at all. But we get anchored to this information, and it overwhelms our system to the point where that is what is dictating what we're doing. And the truth of it is if a pitcher relies on what they did before and isn't willing to look or make adjustments, they're in trouble because guess what? The opponent has looked to make adjustments. They've studied the film. They've practiced the scenarios. They have an idea of what your sequence might be, so we have to adjust. All I needed to do was look one more time at the schedule and have that be my new anchor instead of the one that I felt that made me rush. But as we know, when we get under pressure, that amygdala starts to go. I didn't feel out of control, but I had, my emotion took over just enough that it didn't allow me to bring in other information. As soon as the thought of time popped into my head, it was my opportunity to observe and ask. And that would have taken care of the whole situation. One more little bias that we run into maybe is the overconfidence effect. I was not overconfident going in. I was confident because I am competent in these things, but I was overconfident in my assumption. And we know what assumption is a long word for. Ass, you, me. Keeping it simple, right? I was assuming that I had the correct schedule. And that assumption and not verifying the timing dictated my behavior, right? Put simply, this overconfidence effect describes our tendency to overestimate our abilities or the accuracy of our information. I did not overestimate my abilities. I always know that there is room for improvement, but I did overestimate the accuracy of my information. How do we combat these and show up as our best selves? That's really the question, right? Routines, checklist, help, and mindfulness. Those 4 things. I mentioned at the very beginning that this experience was good for me. I need to look at ways I can continue to improve and hone my skills and share information that I'm so passionate about with other groups. And I think I do a pretty good job of it. I'm going to bring energy. I am engaged. and I'm authentic. Those are my three things that I'm always going to be. Authentic, I'm going to bring energy, and we're going to be engaged. And we are going to get excited about our own mindset and the control that we have. But I start today now with a new routine. And this routine is going to be based on my checklist, but the routine is going to start by asking myself 4 or 5 questions, important questions before I begin. And they will change based on the scenario and the environment. But from now on, the notes that I have in my pocket that I have just in case I need them are going to include a checklist, just like the checklist we use for camps that we run, just like the checklist that I use for the beginning of the semester, just like the checklist that I use before I do a session with the team. Checklists. What do we need? What do I need to know? What order do I need to know it? Who do I need to get information from? What questions do I have? Where do I need to be? I know I need to be present. So all of these things on the checklist are going to help me. I'm going to add in a note to have someone give me a 10-minute, a 5-minute. You're almost done. Why not ask? Help is something else that I just mentioned. Help is very, very important. Had I had help today and asked my buddy Jeff or John or any other people that I knew in the room to say, hey, let me know when I have 10 minutes left so I can make sure I finish up strong, right? That could have made a huge difference. But there's going to be a few other cues that I'm going to have checklists for as well. It's a work in progress. But a new routine and a new checklist are going to be part of my everyday. Here's how I start my presentation day, period. I have lots of other checklists on clothes and printouts and PowerPoints and all those different things, all the things I need to take, including all my adapters and those things. But I didn't have a checklist until now that was in my pocket for that day. Because I just do it, right? But I can do it better. So that's one thing we're going to think about. I mentioned help just a second ago, asking for someone to tell me when it's 10 minutes. But this whole help thing is huge. I was talking with one of the athletes on one of the teams that I work with just the other day. She ended up having an awesome weekend. She had a double as a pinch hitter and then worked herself right back in the lineup as a full-time hitter. But prior to last weekend, she was so in her head. Like literally, she said she was getting up to the plate and she couldn't like function. She like literally would freeze every now and again. So I said, okay, well, what can we do? We put together a checklist for her, a couple of things. She had her back pocket notes, all those different things. But the one thing that we implemented that we hadn't really thought of before was help from the dugout. One of her teammates was going to give her a cue, and when that cue happened, she knew what her plan was. Help. Why don't we ask for help? Again, if I had asked one guy in the middle, how much time do I have left? Cool. Here we go. Help. It's vital to being our best. Finally, and this sounds woo-woo, and you know I'm not a woo-woo kind of person, but mindfulness, putting in a couple mindfulness practices can really help us. It's shown, obviously, there's research all over the place on this, that mindfulness increases our focus and reduces the impact of these cognitive biases. And there's just a few little simple ones that we can do. We can begin task meetings or in between plays, right? In between each of these things, we can stop. Just stand or sit still for 3 to 5 seconds. Take 3 to 5 deep breaths, 3 breaths, 2 breaths, whatever it is, a physiological sigh. Tune into our body and our surroundings and ask, what is the most important thing? What's our win? What's the most important thing that needs my focus right now? This creates a mental reset and it clears lingering distractions. It's like that Control-Alt-Delete. Here we go. Where am I right now? Before games, before presentations, before big decisions, we can choose a cue word. All of these things go back to the things that we talk about with our athletes. Calm, lead, clear, whatever it might be. Just take a breath while repeating it silently. Or say it out loud. You know, I'm a big proponent of saying out loud. I talked to a kid last night, and she is going to say 1, 1, 1, 1, 1 out loud because she needs to take 1 step. Not 2, 1. Instead of focusing on what we don't want, we're talking about what we want. This anchors us to our values. It regulates our physiology. In high-pressure moments, it brings us back. Calm, lead, clear. Boom, right? We can start the day or a coaching session just like this. We can set a timer and close our eyes. I know this sounds like, whoa, who's ever going to be able to do this? But it's simple, right? Focus only on our breath. Just think about if we started before we walk into a facility, before we get into the dugout, before we go up. My son just played in solo and ensemble, and right before he started, he was standing there with his trombone, all dressed up in his bow tie and everything, looking all handsome, and he closed his eyes, and he held his trombone there, and he went, and I said, hey, where'd you learn that? And he said, Billy, his teacher, not his mom, Billy, his teacher. I don't care who taught him. It's awesome, right? Set a timer. Let thoughts pass. Now, that he didn't have time to do that. He was just resetting. But if you can set a timer just for a short period of time, 2 minutes, let thoughts pass. If we can learn to let thoughts pass, we start to train our brain to return to the present when distractions hit. Here I am. I'm focusing only on my breath. Thoughts are coming in. You're never going to have a fully clear mind. And the thoughts can go. And then that allows us under pressure to be able to do the same thing. All right, you don't have any time for this stuff? How about during a walk? How about when you're driving a car? How about when you're setting up for practice? Do a mental scan. Here are the questions. What am I feeling? What's distracting me? What do I need to bring to this space? How do I need to show up? This can be on the way, you're walking down to the facility, you're setting up, whatever it is, but you're just doing a mental scan of where you are and then where you need to be. Getting in the habit of asking these questions can help us be prepared when pressure mounts because we already know where we are and we know what adjustments we need to make to get to who we really want to be at that time. None of these tools require a meditation cushion. They don't require hours of quiet. They just require intention. That's it. Intention to build a routine, intention to build a checklist, intention to ask for help, intention to stop just for a second. Think about what you really need. I didn't need to share more information. I needed to know how much time I had. Plain and simple. It all worked out. It was fine. It was good. It just wasn't over the top great. I guess I can let other people say it was good, but I got information out. But I love this stuff, and I want to make sure I hit it on the nail on the head so that everybody gets excited about this the way that I do. We never enjoy performing out of kilter. But the truth of it is, whether we win or lose, we learn. And sometimes it's the best thing that can happen to us to help us reset, to refocus, to try to implement some different tools that can help us sharpen and be our best. And that's what we're really looking for. Some of the toughest lessons I've learned have taught me the most. We were at Michigan. The ball goes down to the corner. We could have scored, but our base running wasn't good enough. And I will tell you right now, that never happened again because we adjusted. And we had a new routine. We had a new base running checklist. And we knew exactly what we needed to do. And we talked about it, and we practiced it, and we performed it. And we ended up leading the nation in stolen bases and doing all in first and thirds and all this stuff year after year after year because of tough lessons that turned us toward a direction that we need to make an adjustment. My new checklist, my new routines, my new 1 or 2 mindful practices that will be put in, all of these things are going to help me show up better the next time. So those 3 power moves that the next group gets to hear, look out. Authentic, engaged, we're going to be there. Enthusiastic, that's where we're going to be. All of those things, spot on, because I'm going to know exactly how much time I have. I'm going to know exactly what fits into that time, and my mindfulness will help me stay there and be my best. But by acknowledging and addressing some of the subtle factors that can derail us, we can up our game because we know what to do when they show up. So, all's well, oh my goodness, all's well that ends well. And in all reality, this ended well. I thank all those people that were there today. I hope that we get an opportunity to cross paths again. And thank you for helping me learn and get better. I hope that some of this does the same for you. Until next week, don't forget to check out this week's episode on Friday, Game Changers Athlete Edition. We are talking with the parents of Katie Scott. She's a player for the KC Current, which is the Kansas City Current of the Women's Professional Soccer League. It's a great discussion about parenting and raising a high level athlete. And if you can share it with others, we would really appreciate it. Until next week, have a great week.